"I'll give you $20,000 if you can speak Japanese," the businessman announced, throwing cash on her tray. The entire restaurant went silent. Everyone expected her to fail. Everyone expected her to beg. Everyone expected her to break. But what happened next turned a millionaire's cruel game into the biggest mistake of his life. You know, sometimes life has a funny way of testing us. Not the kind of test you take in school, but the kind that shows you who you really are when everything's been stripped away. This is a story about one of those moments. A moment when someone tried to break a woman's spirit, not knowing that some spirits can't be broken, no matter how hard you try. It happened on a Tuesday night in Chicago at a place called the Golden Rose. Now, if you've never heard of the Golden Rose, that's because it's the kind of restaurant where people like you and me would never get past the front door unless we were carrying someone's coat. This was where the rich and powerful came to see and be seen, where a single bottle of wine cost more than most people's monthly rent. And there she was, walking between those tables in her crisp black uniform, carrying a silver tray like she'd done her whole life. Her name was Nicole Carter, and she was 29 years old. If you looked at her, you'd see a waitress, just another face in the background, invisible to the people she served. But if you really looked, if you paid attention to her eyes, you might have seen something else, a quiet strength, a dignity that had nothing to do with the uniform she wore. But Robert Kane didn't see any of that. Robert Kane never really saw people like Nicole at all. "Hey, sweetheart." His voice cut through the quiet conversations like a knife. "Come over here. I've got a proposition for you." Nicole turned. She'd served Robert's table before. He was one of those men who wore his wealth like armor, who thought his money gave him the right to treat people however he wanted. Tonight, he had 3 business guests with him, investors from Tokyo who sat uncomfortably, already sensing something was wrong. She walked over, her tray balanced perfectly. "Yes, Mr. Kane. How can I help you?" What happened next made every conversation in that restaurant stop. Robert pulled out his wallet and started throwing $100 bills onto her tray. One by one, they fell like leaves, creating a pile that grew and grew. 50 bills. 70, 100 bills, $10,000, Robert announced loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Right here, right now. It's all yours if you could do one simple thing for me." Nicole looked at the money. $10,000. That was more than she made in 6 months of carrying trays and swallowing her pride. It was enough to pay for her mama's medicine for half a year, enough to keep the lights on and food on the table, without lying awake at night, doing math in her head, trying to figure out how to make it all work. But she knew this wasn't about the money. This was never about the money. "What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly. Robert leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face like oil on water. "My friends here are from Japan. I told them I know everything about Asian culture. So here's the deal. Serve us in Japanese. Full menu presentation. Show us how much you know." One of the investors, an older gentleman with kind eyes, shifted uncomfortably. "Robert, this isn't necessary." No, let me finish," Robert interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "If she can actually do it, convince us that she knows what she's talking about, the money's hers. But when she fails..." He paused for dramatic effect. "When she fails, she gets down on her knees right here, in front of everyone, and apologizes for wasting our time, for pretending to be something she's not." The silence that followed was heavy. You could feel it pressing down on the room like a weight. People at other tables had stopped eating, stopped talking. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see what would happen next. Nicole stood there, holding that tray with $10,000 on it. And for a moment, she was somewhere else. She was standing in front of a classroom at Northwestern University, teaching a lecture hall full of students about the beauty of language, about how words connect us across cultures and continents. She was Dr. Nicole Carter, professor of linguistics, a woman who spoke 8 languages fluently, who had published research papers that scholars still cited years later. That was 3 years ago, before the phone call that changed everything. "Your mother's had a heart attack. You need to come now." Patricia Carter had raised Nicole alone, working 2 jobs to put her daughter through school. When Nicole got her PhD, when she became a professor, her mama had cried with joy. You did it, baby. You really did it. Now Patricia needed round-the-clock care. The medical bills came in waves, each one higher than the last. Insurance covered some, but not enough. Never enough. Nicole sold her car, then her furniture, then her small apartment. She took a leave from the university, thinking it would be temporary. But temporary became permanent when the bills kept coming and the savings ran out. The university couldn't hold her position forever. They had to hire someone else. Her colleagues sent sympathetic emails at first, but those eventually stopped. Friends drifted away when they realized she couldn't go to conferences anymore, couldn't network, couldn't be useful to their careers. So here she was, 3 years later, wearing a waitress uniform instead of standing at a podium. Here she was, being offered money to perform like a trained animal for a man who couldn't even pronounce the names of his own dinner guests correctly. She looked at Robert Kane, really looked at him, and she saw what he couldn't see about himself. This wasn't a powerful man. This was a scared little boy who needed to push other people down to feel tall. "I'll do it," Nicole said, and her voice was steady as stone. "But let's make it interesting. $20,000 if I succeed. If I fail, I'll do exactly what you said. I'll apologize to everyone here." Robert blinked. For just a second, his confidence wavered. But he was in too deep now, with all these eyes watching. "Deal," he said, extending his hand. Nicole shook it, and as their hands touched, something passed between them. He felt it, a flicker of doubt. She felt it too, but for her, it was something else entirely. It was the feeling of a door opening. The feeling of 3 years of silence finally finding a voice. What happened next would change everything. You know what courage really is? It's not the absence of fear. It's deciding that what's on the other side matters more than what you might lose. That's where Nicole was now, standing at the edge of a moment that could either destroy her or set her free. Robert was enjoying himself. You could see in the way he leaned back, gesturing to the other tables, making sure everyone was watching. "Before we start," he announced loudly, "let me make this clear. This woman thinks she can impress you all with some high school Japanese. But when she fails, and trust me, she will fail, I want everyone here to witness what happens when people try to pretend there's something they're not." Kenji, one of the investors, frowned deeply. "Robert, this is getting uncomfortable. Maybe we should—" "Uncomfortable?" Robert cut him off. "This is educational. You want to do business in America? You need to understand how things work here." He pointed at Nicole with contempt. "Look at her. She probably didn't even finish college. She's here carrying plates because it's all she's qualified to do." Nicole felt those words like blows, but she didn't flinch. 3 years of waiting tables had taught her that when people think you're invisible, they show you who they really are. And Robert Kane was showing everyone exactly who he was. Hiroshi, the older investor with kind eyes, spoke up. His English was careful, precise. "Young lady, you don't have to do this. This isn't right." Nicole looked at him and smiled softly. "Thank you, sir. But yes, I do." "Why?" he asked gently. "Because sometimes you have to show people that what they see isn't all there is. Sometimes you have to remind them that everyone has a story they don't know." Robert laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Very poetic. But can you actually speak Japanese, or are we wasting time here?" "Before I begin," Nicole said, looking directly at the investors, "I want to ask, do any of you speak Japanese fluently?" Hiroshi nodded slowly. "I was born in Osaka. Japanese is my first language." Kenji raised his hand. "Same here. Tokyo." The third investor, who had been mostly quiet, spoke up. "I'm from Kyoto. I think we can judge whether your Japanese is real or not." Robert's smile flickered. Just for a moment, uncertainty crossed his face. "Well, of course they speak Japanese. That's the whole point." "Good," Nicole interrupted him, her voice calm but firm. "Because I want to make sure there are qualified people here to evaluate my pronunciation, my grammar, my cultural understanding. Mr. Kane, you don't speak Japanese at all, do you?" The question hung in the air. Robert's face reddened. I don't need to speak it to know when someone's faking. So you're going to judge something you don't understand based on whether it sounds convincing to you? Nicole's voice was gentle, but her words cut deep. Isn't that what you've been doing to me since I started working here? Judging me based on what you think you see, without knowing anything about who I really am. Kenji suddenly sat forward and pulled out his phone, typing quickly. Hiroshi leaned over to see what he was looking at. Both men's eyes widened in surprise. What are you two talking about? Robert demanded, his voice rising. Hiroshi looked at Nicole with something like awe. Dr. Carter, Northwestern University. Computational linguistics. Specialization in East Asian language structures. The silence that followed was absolute. That's impossible, Robert stammered. She's a waitress. I was a professor, Nicole said quietly, until life gave me a choice. My career or my mother's life. I chose my mother. You could have heard a pin drop in that restaurant. People at nearby tables had stopped pretending not to listen. They were all watching now, watching something unfold that was bigger than any of them expected. 3 years ago, Nicole continued, and her voice carried the weight of those years. I was teaching at Northwestern. I had published research on linguistic patterns in Japanese business communication. I had given lectures in Tokyo, in Osaka, and Kyoto. I spoke at international conferences. And then my mama had a heart attack. She looked around the room, meeting eyes that wouldn't meet hers before. The bills came. Insurance covered some, but not enough. I sold everything I had. My car, my furniture, my books. I took a leave from the university, thinking it would be temporary, but the bills kept coming. My mama needed care, medicine, therapy. The university couldn't hold my position forever. Robert was shaking his head. No, this is some kind of trick. You can't be. I can't be what, Mr. Kane? Nicole's voice was soft, but it carried power. I can't be educated and black. I can't be brilliant and broke. I can't be a doctor and a daughter who chose love over ambition. Kenji stood up. Dr. Carter, I read your paper on Japanese business discourse. It changed how our company trains employees. Nicole smiled. That was my doctoral thesis. Robert looked slapped. This can't be happening. You tried to humiliate a scholar whose work is taught across Japan. Hiroshi said quietly. You looked at her uniform and decided she was worthless. Nicole picked up the menu. She'd seen it many times, had smiled at some of the awkward translations. Shall I begin? Without waiting for an answer, she started speaking in Japanese. It wasn't just Japanese. It was perfect, flowing, beautiful Japanese, the kind that takes years of immersion to master. She described the first dish, traditional sukiyaki, explaining not just the ingredients, but the cultural significance, the regional variations, the proper way to serve it according to Kyoto traditions. Hiroshi's mouth fell open. Kenji started recording on his phone, his hands trembling slightly. The third investor began translating for nearby tables, his voice filled with amazement. Nicole moved to the second dish, switching effortlessly into the Osaka dialect, explaining the difference in preparation styles between regions. Then to the third, using formal Tokyo Japanese, the kind used in business settings and diplomatic meetings. She spoke for 5 minutes straight. And in those 5 minutes, she wasn't just describing food. She was painting pictures with words, weaving in cultural stories, historical context, linguistic nuances that had people leaning forward, completely mesmerized. When she finished, the silence lasted for several heartbeats. Then Hiroshi started clapping. Then Kenji. Then the third investor. Then people at other tables joined in. The applause spread to the restaurant like wildfire, building until it filled every corner of that elegant space. Robert sat frozen, his face the color of old paper, his confident smile completely gone. Nicole looked at him, and in her eyes was not triumph, but something deeper. Something like sadness for all the people he'd probably treated this way before, for all the potential he'd dismissed with a glance. You're $20,000, Mr. Kane, she said quietly. And then I believe you owe everyone here an apology. Sometimes in the moments after everything changes, there's a strange kind of quiet, not the absence of sound, but the presence of realization. That's what filled the Golden Rose restaurant now. The quiet of people understanding they'd just witnessed something that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Robert Kane's hands were shaking as he reached for his wallet. Every eye in that restaurant was on him now. All those important people, all those society figures he'd been trying to impress for years. They were all watching him pull out money to pay a woman he'd tried to destroy. I didn't know, he stammered, counting bills with trembling fingers. No, Nicole said softly. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't want to know. You saw what you expected to see, and that was enough for you. $20,000 landed on her tray, one bill at a time. It should have felt like victory. But Nicole felt something else entirely. She felt tired. Tired of having to prove her worth to people who'd already decided she had none. Hiroshi stood up from the table. Robert, I came to Chicago to discuss a partnership with you. A $50 million investment in your real estate projects. Robert's face lit up with desperate hope. Yes, that's right. We cannot, Hiroshi said firmly. A man who would humiliate another human being for entertainment is not someone I can trust with my company's money. Our business here is finished. Kenji nodded, standing as well. Agreed, we'll find other partners. Better partners. Partners who understand that character matters more than arrogance. The third investor was already on his phone, speaking rapidly in Japanese. When he hung up, he looked at Nicole with respect in his eyes. Dr. Carter, my company is looking for a director of international communications. Someone who understands not just language, but culture. Someone who can build bridges between different worlds. Would you be interested in discussing this opportunity? The question hung in the air like a gift Nicole wasn't sure she could accept. I have responsibilities, she said, thinking of her mama, thinking of the bills that never stopped coming, thinking of the life she'd somehow managed to build from broken pieces. We offer full health benefits, the investor continued gently, for you and your entire family. The salary is $180,000 a year. You would work with our teams in Chicago, Tokyo, and Seoul, helping us communicate across cultures with the kind of excellence you've demonstrated here tonight. Nicole felt tears prick her eyes. $180,000. Health benefits for her mama. A chance to use her mind again, her education, her passion for language and culture. A chance to be Dr. Nicole Carter again, not just Nicole the waitress. I would need to think about it, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Of course. Here's my card. Call me when you're ready. He bowed respectfully, the kind of bow that acknowledges an equal, a peer, someone worthy of deep respect. As the investors gathered their things to leave, Robert sat alone at his table, the ruins of his arrogance scattered around him like broken glass. Wait, he called out. You can't just leave. We had an agreement. A deal. Hiroshi turned back, his face carved from stone. We had a discussion, Mr. Kane. Now we have a decision. Goodbye. After they left, Robert looked at Nicole with something desperate in his eyes, something that might have been the beginning of understanding. You have to understand, how was I supposed to know? Nicole set her tray down carefully. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but unyielding. Mr. Kane, you want to know what you should have known? You should have known that every person you meet is carrying a story you can't see. That the woman who serves your coffee might be a poet. That the man who parks your car might be a musician. That worth isn't measured by what we do for money, but by who we are when nobody's watching. I'm sorry, Robert said, and for the first time that evening, he sounded like he meant it. I appreciate that, Nicole said. But your apology isn't just for me. It's for every person you've ever looked past, looked down on, or looked through like they were invisible. And Mr. Kane, you need to apologize to yourself, too, for becoming the kind of man who needs to hurt others to feel powerful. She picked up her tray and walked away, leaving Robert Kane alone with his thoughts and his shame. The video of what happened that night went viral within 24 hours. Someone had recorded it on their phone, and it spread across social media like wildfire. Racist businessman destroyed by brilliant scholar forced to work as waitress read the headlines. 15 million views in 3 days. The fallout was immediate and severe. Robert's other investors pulled out. His business partners distanced themselves. His reputation, built on decades of ruthless dealing and careful networking, crumbled in less than a week. He lost his company, his mansion, his position in Chicago society. His wife filed for divorce. His adult children, ashamed of the man in that viral video, stopped returning his calls. But this story isn't really about Robert Kane's fall. It's about Nicole Carter's rise. 6 months later, Nicole stood in a corner office on the 48th floor of a gleaming building in downtown Chicago. Lake Michigan stretched out before her, beautiful and endless. She was a director of global communications for Tanaka Industries, traveling between Chicago, Tokyo, and Seoul, building bridges between cultures with the same passion she'd once brought to her university lectures. Her mama, Patricia, had the best medical care money could buy. They lived in a beautiful apartment with a view of the park, and Patricia was getting stronger every day. On good days, she'd sit by the window and watch her daughter get ready for work, pride shining in her eyes bright as sunlight. "You look like yourself again," Patricia told her one morning. Nicole paused, adjusting her professional blazer. "What do you mean, Mama?" Like the girl who used to come home from teaching, all lit up about some language pattern she discovered. Like you're doing what you were meant to do. Nicole hugged her mama tight, feeling the warmth and strength that had carried them both through the darkest times. "I never stopped being that girl. I just had to remember that sometimes the path to where you're meant to be goes through places you never expected." She sometimes thought about Robert. She'd heard he was selling used cars for minimum wage now. Part of her felt sorry for him. But she understood that some people need to lose everything before they learn anything. One day, she returned to the Golden Rose as a guest, dining with clients. The manager greeted her warmly, treating her with the respect she'd always deserved. Sitting where she'd once served, Nicole felt profound peace. Not because of revenge, not because she'd proven anyone wrong, but because she'd proven something to herself. Dignity can't be taken from you. It can only be given away. And she'd never given hers away. The young waitress serving her was nervous, hands shaking as she poured water. Nicole smiled warmly. "Thank you," she said, making eye contact, really seeing her. The waitress smiled back, grateful to be acknowledged as a person, because that's what Nicole learned. Every person matters. Every person has value. Every person carries dreams that can't be measured by what they do to survive. This story is for everyone who's been underestimated, for everyone who's chosen loved ones over dreams, for everyone judged by circumstances instead of character. Your story isn't over. Your worth isn't defined by your current chapter. And sometimes, the people who try to break you end up setting you free. Dignity is something no one can take unless you hand it over. And Nicole Carter never did.